everyone. Welcome to Buzzing About Romance Happy Hour Edition. I am super excited that Amanda is here with me tonight. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, everybody.
This is your second happy hour, right?
It is. Yes.
Congratulations. I didn't scare you off after the first one.
I'm here.
Well, and I am super excited because our guest for the evening is author Carla Luna, which means you were here for Readathon. We did not scare you away, and you came back.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to have you here. Um, I have to tell you that even months later, so Readathon was the Friday after Thanksgiving, and we'll be doing it again next year. People still talk about your interview.
Oh, good. That's wonderful. I don't remember what I said though.
Well, it was about your Mary Magdalene
Oh,
fanfic.
oh man, that.
That's like the thing. Because I was talking to somebody and they're like, isn't that the author from Readathon that talked to? And I'm like, absolutely it is. But she
Oh
also
my
writes
God.
really great, quirky archaeology romance. So everybody should check those out.
And to be clear, we were not like upset about the Mary Magdalene fic.
No.
We were all our fanfic. We were all about it.
Yes.
Oh, good.
We were
Okay.
all,
Yeah.
none of us were
No.
offended. We were all like, where can we find it?
Yes.
Because, we are those people. We are those
Okay.
people. Um, So, rules of the night are you can ask all the questions in the chat. We will do our best to answer them. I should probably tell you what book we're talking about and celebrating. Um, because I'm so in love with this. I've read 2 books in this series of 3, and they're so fun. They are so fun, and I didn't even know it was a corner of romance that I wanted. So, we are celebrating the release of Tour Wars, which is book 3 in the Romancing the Ruins. And so these are archaeologist
Mm-hmm.
romances. It's so
Yes.
fun. Now, do you have like a love affair with like Indiana Jones type things or just the
Well,
adventure?
I used to be an archaeologist.
Did I know this?
I don't
Yeah,
know if I told.
we
I
talked about it
think
at
we
book
might have talked about it before, but
readathon.
I was an archaeologist and I loved it. And I love the camaraderie. And I also really always thought, like, boy, there are a lot of shenanigans that go on in a dig, like a lot. You get a bunch of 20 somethings and you're hot all day and you cool down at night. You have a couple beers. Stuff happens. Every dig I've been on was on, something would happen. Somebody, there would be hooking up, there would be like flirtation, all kinds of stuff. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, I should write about this someday for fun, not in a serious PhD way, but in a fun romance way.
So it's kind of like because of being on a dig, it's probably like a micro community similar to
Mhm.
what you see on like a reality TV show type thing.
Yeah, you're stuck together. Sometimes you're on an island. Sometimes you're like in a remote area. Sometimes, you're usually not that close to like sort of civilization. You're out in the middle of nowhere. So you're together all the time. And even on the weekends, you tend to go to the bars together and go dancing together and hang out. Nobody goes home. You're there for the duration.
So intriguing. Um,
Yes.
you really have to like your coworkers.
You do, and they're not all, I mean, they're not all that. Some of them are really difficult. And I had a couple of really jerky supervisors, which sort of led to the jerky guys that I've written about in Field Rules and Troy Story. There are some nasty male authority figures, and that's partly based on my own experiences.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how much of that was true to life, how much you had experienced in the field.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, in fact, the Grant and Field Rules, the first book, is sort of based on this guy who basically said to me, archaeology is no place for a woman. I think you should go into numismatics, which is the study of coins, because then you wouldn't have to go in the field.
Did you
So,
punch him? I'd have punched him. I'm
no,
just
at the time
saying.
I was not as gutsy as my own heroines. I wish I had been. I wish I'd had the courage to stand up and say, you're full of it. Like I was sort of like, oh, okay. Like I was just anxious and nervous, and that's why I've made my heroine stronger. But a lot of times I would let people say things and I would take it all in and be like, oh, I guess they're right. They're authority figures. I'm just this woman trying to figure out what I want to do. And it was tough sometimes.
I imagine. So in the description of the video are all the ways to connect to Carla, and we also have her bio there, and you can find the links to her website and sign up for her newsletter and all of those things. And like I said, Carla was here for readathon, so we did do a little get to know you there, but we're going to do some more because, we need to.
Good.
And so, we already have questions here. Does the side gig tour guide happen? As an archaeologist, do you get side gigs as tour guides?
No, that was made up. And actually, the reason, what inspired that though, was I went to Italy last April as research for this book. And I took a tour of Pompeii and Herculaneum led by a real archaeologist. And so I asked him, I'm like, so are you an archaeologist? He's like, yes, of course. I'm very busy being an archaeologist. I just do this sometimes. Like he was sort of offended that I was questioning why he was leading a tour and not on the site. And I was like, huh, interesting. And there were a lot of tour guides that I had met that were archaeologists or had PhDs. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting because I bet this wasn't their first choice to lead a bunch of people through Pompeii, like on a hot day over and over and over again. So that kind of fueled my mind. And I don't know, I've never had it happen. I never did it, but it made me think that that was a possibility.
I mean, it kind of works, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, Also, I want to go on a research trip. So the next time you have to go on a research trip to somewhere, I am happy to go and be your assistant. I'll carry your
Thank you.
bag.
That sounds
Right?
good.
I mean, take us on a tour, like the tour wars, and be like, listen, your real life book experience. Come
Yeah,
join my tour. I'm in.
that sounds good.
I think that'd be fun. Um, so one of the things in this book is it's all about the characters being archaeologists, and you were sharing that you were an archaeologist in the first part of life. Do you still do a little bit with it now?
No, I pretty much gave it up. I worked for a museum after I was kind of down in the field. I worked for this place called the Getty in Los Angeles, the Getty Museum, and they have a research center. I worked there for years, and then when I had kids, I decided to stay home and just be with my kids, and I kind of gave it up. I was still always interested in it, but I just couldn't imagine trying to go in the field and trying to continue. And so I kind of gave it up. And then I started in like 2008. I was like, something's missing. And actually, it wasn't archaeology, it was writing. And that's because I'd always liked writing. That's when I started writing again. And it was only when I started thinking about what I wanted to write about, I was like, wow, I'd love to bring archaeology back into my life. So I'd love to combine these two things.
And you say that I was working at the Getty at their research. Like it was just some place.
It was a really great opportunity.
It
I was in
was
the
the
right place at the
freaking
right.
Getty, lady.
Yeah.
Like that's a little bit of a badge of honor. Like
Yeah.
I really loved it. It was a really, really cool place to work. I was very, very lucky to get in at a time when I just had a master's and I never got my PhD. And they're like, well, you got a background in art history and archaeology. And I knew somebody there, which always helps, as
sure.
TJ would say, it's who you know. So that helped a lot. And I just kept staying there. And then finally my husband and I moved to Wisconsin because we had our daughter and we're like, this is an expensive place to raise kids. We need to we want a house, and his family all lived in Wisconsin. So that's why we ended up moving.
Um so you were missing writing. And
Hmm.
2008, did you start writing romance right away or did you dabble in other genres or were you like a literary fiction and then you came over to
No. So here's the funny thing. I wrote what would now be called romantasy. I was all in. I wrote this epic saga. It was like 900 pages, 3 books called The Fallen Princess, The Mask of the Empress. I forgot the third book. That was set in a fictional world that was a mirror world of 16th century Sassanid Persia, because I used to study art history. And it was all about this woman who wanted to be like a miniature painter and paint these like amazing paintings. And she was talented and she's forced to marry this emperor of a warlike country and all the things they go through. And it was really, I drew maps, I created histories and timelines. I was so obsessed with it for years. It was long. It was really long.
Well, yeah, but 3 books. I mean, you just break it up into 3 books.
Right. And I did try querying the first book. And at the table, we're like, well, what is this? Is this fantasy? Is this romance?
it might be time to dig it out and
I
like
ended the game there. But I really love this world. And I was so into it. And I had like a mirror world for China and one for India. And there were all these different like parts of the empire that were sort of similar to other like 16th century parts of the world.
That sounds amazing.
That sounds
It
so
was really cool.
fascinating.
Yeah, and I actually had worked in Turkey on one of my digs, and when I was there, I realized I wanted to write like a pseudo Ottoman Empire book. So I also did that. There was another fantasy set in like a fake Ottoman Empire because they had, you know, magic and stuff. And that was really cool too. And I that's what I did for a long time. And then I just was like, you know what, nobody wants this kind of stuff. It's weird, it's unusual. I couldn't really find fantasy romance like on shelves and stuff, you know, didn't really, there wasn't much there. And so I pivoted and I started writing young adult books instead.
So everybody wants to know, are these published? And if they're not, they should be. They sound so cool. So
They are not,
if
no. And I've thought about going back and looking through them and seeing, I'm a better storyteller now than I was. So I think the world building was great. The storytelling needs work. So it's still like in the back of my mind, like, oh, this would be cool to go back to this world.
we are all for it. We encourage you to do it. We're totally the people that are at the party going, do it, do it. Seriously.
We
So,
are.
like, I'll be like, hey, I really feel like I need to buy these books, but I haven't read them yet, but I want these paperbacks and the covers are going to change. Should I buy them? Everybody needs that kind of group text.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Because
And we're always like, if you want to know, you're asking the wrong people.
the answer is always yes in our group text most of the time.
Sorry, my cat is meowing. He's being kind of noisy. What do you want?
That's okay. My dogs were being ridiculous, so it's all cool. So what led to romance? To go from, you know, romantasy, fantasy to YA to adult romance. Why
So
romance?
I did YA and I actually wrote the first archaeology book for as new adult, back when new adult was a thing. And then I got an agent. She said I should change it to YA, which kind of bummed me out because I like the steamy parts. But I did do that, and I had this agent. I tried to get a deal for a couple books that were YA. Kind of one was set like the Field Rules book in Cyprus, and one was set in India, and it didn't work out. And I started thinking, like, what is the one genre? What's the one consistent thing of all my books? And everything I've ever written has had romance, even going back to Mary Magdalene. There's always been romance. Like, I always want romance. I always want a happy ending. I love that. So it's like, why don't I just write romance? That's what I like the most out of any of my books is romance.
I really didn't know other genres existed.
Yeah,
Like, well, because think about it. Like, we have an episode coming up in a couple weeks, and we're going to talk about our romance origin story.
yeah.
But, like, I totally read Babysitter's Club, and I was absolutely invested in Marianne and Logan. Like, my heart broke when they broke up. And then, you know, the Sweet Valley High twins and all of their angst. I mean, doesn't
Yeah,
everything have a romance?
I loved it. I used to read Victoria Holt. I don't know if you've ever heard of her.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Gothic, like always, like there was a stern, brooding guy and a governess, or you know, I don't know, a nurse or something like that, and they were on a windswept moor, and he was always very stern, and she was young, and I read all the Victoria Holt books.
I cut my teeth on Jude Devereaux for adult contemporary.
Oh yeah,
And
another
then
good one.
the Judith McNaughts and the Joanna Lindsays. And that's something that was brought up in the chat is, have you ever thought about writing historical romances with your knowledge of history?
I've thought about, and I do love history, but I think it's just a lot of research, and it might just be overwhelming to me. And I might get so bogged down in it that I would lose the thread. So I think I would prefer to read people who've written it and done it really well.
Yeah.
And I love anything to do with Tudor England. So I love reading women's fiction or historical fiction or anything with Tudor England. That's like my favorite.
It's so fun. Do you have a favorite trope you like to read or write?
I love fake dating. I don't know why. I just do. I think it's so fun. It would probably never happen in real life.
I think it happens in real life.
I think
I
it
love
probably
it.
does.
It's one of my favorites.
I love that. And I love any kind of only one bed on a road trip, or, you know, something like, well, in Red Velvet, I have an only one bed trope. I love the only one bed trope. I really like that. Only one room, only one anything.
Amanda, do you think that Tour Wars counts as a vacation fling?
I think I put,
A
I think
ri-
I put I put destination romance. I
Destination
think I didn't
romance.
count it as destination or a vacation, but I put it down as like destination.
It is close proximity, and it borderlines a little bit on forced proximity because,
Right.
a bus
Yeah.
and a hotel, and
Yeah.
like we can't escape each other.
Yeah.
But I love it. I love it. Um so in this book, TJ is the squishiest, softest of cinnamon rolls. Like he might be an underbaked cinnamon
Yeah. He's
roll.
a little underbaked.
Yeah, he is.
Do you have a favorite type of hero?
I do love cinnamon roll heroes. Like I really do. I would say in Red Velvet too, the main character is very much a cinnamon roll. Even like Stuart in Troy Story is. I really like that. And I think it's because my husband's a beta male. He's like such a nice, considerate guy. I really like that. And I did date some alpha bad boys in my younger days, and they weren't the nicest. Like they ended up being kind of jerky. So I was like, I like reading about them. I'm always down for that. But for writing, I sometimes gravitate towards the cinnamon rolls.
Yeah. And TJ is 1,000% the squishiest, softest.
Yeah,
He's such a nerd. So
he really is.
I have to ask though, is your spouse a little nerdy? Because I feel like women who write really good cinnamon rolls, their spouse is a little bit more nerdy like that. Like that.
Okay, so he's a math and computer science
Oh,
teacher.
so yeah.
Yeah. He teaches, he used to teach math in high school. Now he teaches computer science at a nearby university. He's got, lots of dad jokes. He's, that kind of a guy who'll, take a picture of a comic in the newspaper and send it to the kids or whatever. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I married the IT guy, so I absolutely get it. Like
Mhm.
the dad
Yeah.
jokes are strong in that
Yeah.
workforce.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, everybody's giving me a heart. Underbaked cinnamon roll is a fantastic new category. I think that's your husband.
That's funny.
We
Um,
like it.
'cause
Hopefully you would appreciate that.
that's so funny. Um, oh, Sue's saying TJ starts out as an asshole, doesn't he? Well, I didn't read book one, but you were talking about he kind of has a lot of growth from book
He
one in this
does.
series to this book.
Yeah, because in the beginning, so he's kind of insulting the main hero, Rick, is what they call a shovel bum in archaeology, which is somebody who has usually just a bachelor's degree and then goes from dig to dig and does contract work and isn't an academic. And it can be a badge of honor or it can be an insult. And the way when TJ says to Rick, "Oh, you're just a shovel bum," it's very much an insult. And he's kind of like, and he's like, "I'm at Harvard, I'm working with so and so. I have all this experience." Like he brags a lot and he brags constantly in the beginning of the book to the point where it's kind of funny because it breaks up some of the tension and he's kind of a funny guy. And in the second book in Troy Story, he definitely eases up more. He's more of just like a go-to guy. He's part of the dig in Troy Story. And so he's already changed a little bit. But yeah, in the first book, he's definitely annoying. And he's an irritant, I would definitely say.
Do you-
Then we get to see why, though,
Yeah.
in this book,
But you don't know
which is
why in the
really
first
good.
two books. Like,
Yeah.
what's his deal? And then you learn, oh gosh, with the stepdad and the stepbrothers and his dad passing away, there's a lot of emotional stuff that he's dealing with.
he really, as we get him in this book, we do get his complexities.
Mhm.
And so he's not just a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like there is purpose and reason to some of the ways that he cares. And Carla, if you had to get, what would you say TJ's love language is?
So what do you mean by love language? Because I'm
So
always
like
bad.
acts of service, is he a gift giver? Is touch his love language? Like how
I
does
would,
he show his love?
yeah, I would say, he'd want to do something nice, something thoughtful. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think of like what he does at the end, like how he, he helps. I don't want to give away, but what he does as sort of like, he kind of is, he's a knight in shining armor. That's kind of his vibe. Like he really loves saving the day. So he really wants to be the guy who saves the day. He wants to be the guy that opens the door. He wants to be the one, like when he's saying at one point, he's like, "I didn't buy you chocolate or flowers when they're going to go to bed or whatever." And he's like, he's all into sort of chivalry and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes those gestures can be meaningless and like, but for him, it really means something. Like he really he probably would be a big gift giver. I think so.
And I will say you do well with grand gestures. Your dudes grovel,
Yes.
which is nice because I've had a couple of reads recently where we needed more groveling, but TJ groveled, which I liked.
Mhm.
I was happy that he did those things that he did.
I have done the female grovel though in White Wedding, my third book. She's the one who's at fault, and she has to go and grovel in front of his entire extended family at this restaurant where he works and completely humble herself in front of all of them. And so I sometimes like to switch it up and make the woman do the grovel.
Do you have a favorite female archetype?
Um, I would say that I really love women who are passionate about what they do. So like Amelia's archaeology in Red Velvet, April is like a baker. She's an artist and she loves drawing. Same with Dusty and Troy Story. So I like creating heroines that are really passionate about what they do. And sometimes they're struggling to make other people appreciate what they do, but they're really passionate about their careers or about their I don't know what their careers are. Careers is sound of blame, but just they're
Well, their
very passionate about.
passion. They have
Yeah, they have
passion.
passion about what like Amelia's very passionate about her archaeology and her field, and she's not just phoning it in. Like she's really all in. Even when she can't get a job in the beginning, she's like, "I'll take anything. I just want to do this. I love this. This is what I love."
Yeah. Well, and even the heroine in Troy Story, that's book 2, right? Troy Story
Yes.
is book 2. She was very passionate. Like
Yes. Yeah.
she was the driving force.
Yeah, especially at the end when she's like has to make this huge decision over what to do, and she's like, "My ethics are important. Archaeology, the study of the past, is really important." And she's also passionate about her artwork, which is why she kind of is like torn because her mom wants her to get the PhD, and she's like, "But I love being an artist too," and so it's a tough thing.
Yeah. Um, Amanda, do you have any questions?
Sorry.
I
No, no,
no,
it's
oh
okay.
no, no,
I'm taking
no.
over. Just you and I, and
No.
Amanda's like,
I didn't have any questions, but I really liked the way you set up like the perfect rivalry between them. So they're like rivals at work. They're like rivals for school, like Yale and Harvard, and then
Yeah.
they're like Chicago and Milwaukee. So you've
Mhm.
got rival football teams. It's like a whole, it's a theme that goes throughout. And then you find out that, they have all these opposing things, but then they have so much in common. Like they both have lost a parent, like they
Mhm.
both have like this tremendous family pressure. So I really liked how you set all of that up in their dynamic.
Thank you. Yeah, because the outside stuff, yeah, there's huge things to argue about. But in the inside, when they have that, especially when they have the discussion by the piano and they really
Oh yeah.
open up. And I felt like that was a way I really liked writing that scene because it was a way for me to really have them both let down their walls and be honest and open.
so in writing Rivals to Lovers, because we are researching enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers, and adversaries to lovers, and what are
Okay.
kind of the thin line differences? Because there are differences. Um, so when writing Rivals to Lovers, how do you not push it over to that more enemies, deep seated dislike, hatred?
I think it was partly because they did respect each other as archaeologists. Like they knew the other person was like TJ knew Amelia was really smart. And same with Amelia and TJ's like it annoys her because he's so confident and he's sure of himself and he gets annoyed by her because she knows all these languages. And so I felt like even if they were rivals, there was this grudging admiration, like, yeah, this person is on my level. And in the beginning, when in that scene in the hotel room in the very beginning, and she's like, "Why did you undermine me?" And he's like, "You're the only one worth challenging."
That
So
was a
there's
great
that.
scene.
I loved writing that, and that was like that feeling of like he's like, "Yeah, I love to challenge you." And so there's a little. I think with true enemies, there would be more hatred and less of that sort of admiration, kind of like interest. Like they're rivals, but they're like, "Yeah, but I think you're kind of hot," and there's that sort of feeling. I don't know.
I think it's interesting because, there's this fine line, like
Mhm,
between hatred and love. And it's
mhm,
I like rivals to lovers. I
mhm.
like that there is competition and kind of that undercurrent of just being the best.
Yeah, yeah,
And when you get into enemies to lovers, sometimes it just feels like there's so much hatred. Like, how do you move and let go of all of that to
yeah.
get to
That's it.
like,
That one's tough because I feel like with enemies, there's a lot of sometimes there's prank wars or they really do like undermine each other. And I felt like with these two, like they weren't gonna try to ruin each other's careers. They weren't gonna make things awful for the other person. They got frustrated with the other person because of the different styles. But I felt like sometimes I've read enemies to lovers where they prank or they do really mean things. And sometimes that's hard for me to take. I'm like, well, in real life, that would be kind of rough.
yeah, it would be. And I liked that this was like competition, the
Yes.
challenges.
Yeah.
Um, it kind of had, so I'm obviously a little older, but it kind of had that road rules from MTV back in the 90s like vibe. Do you know what I'm talking
Oh
about? Like
yeah.
that
Yeah.
competition, but we're in this close proximity
Right.
and I'm
Yeah.
gonna come out on top, but I kind of have these feels and vibes for you. Like it just had that intensity, and it
Yeah, I
was made
like
for a
that, and I
fast
like
read.
the idea that they're stuck, they have to make the best of it, they're gonna play on their strengths. Yeah, it was really fun to write. I wish I could have written more. There were some scenes that I had to like take out because it got really long. Um, there's just a lot of things that because there were a lot of places I didn't have time to describe. I mean, it's a 10-day tour, so I had to keep it reasonable, but it was very fun to write about them.
Do newsletter bonus content.
I was
Well, I
gonna,
do have a bonus epilogue too that
Oh,
I
do
should
we?
send you. Yes, that involves the Trojan horse because that's like a running
Oh,
theme. So I will send you the link to that.
okay,
yes.
yes, please do,
Yeah.
because I did read it. So I don't know. Do you have a toxic book trait? I have a toxic book trait. I don't read
Well, tell me what yours
epilogues.
is so I know what one is.
Well, so my toxic book trait is I don't read epilogues.
Oh, okay.
I also don't read blurbs. Like a title and a cover can
Wow.
sell me on a book and I just go in. Like I don't, and sometimes it's to my benefit and sometimes I'm like, "Guys, I'm reading really bonkers things." And they're like, "Stop. Stop with the crazy." But I just have to. So do you have a toxic book trait? Like do you bend
Yeah.
spines or
Well, mine is if I'm reading a romance and I sense the black moment is coming, especially if I'm on my Kindle, I'm like, I flip, 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 flip. I get to it. Read about it. I'm like, okay, do they solve it? Flip, flip, flip. Yes. Go back. Now I can enjoy the book and relax because I'm so stressed about the dark moment and what's going to happen. And if it's going to be resolved in a way that I like, that I just can't relax because I'm reading so fast to get through it that I have to sometimes, I don't do this all the time, but I will often flip ahead, read it, know that it's going to be okay. I mean, I'm reading romance, so duh, but
right?
I have to know it's going to be okay. Then I go back and I read at my leisure, like, now I can enjoy this. No matter how dark it gets, I know there's a happy ending. So that is my naughty toxic trait.
That's so fun.
Leah
I
does that too.
Leah does that too. She'll skip ahead to the last two chapters just to make sure that she's cool with everything. And then she
Hmm.
goes back. She will also read chapters at random.
Oh, I don't do that. No,
She's very odd, but we love her.
no.
Um, Amanda, do you have a toxic book trait? Other than that you
I
buy every paperback you can, every special edition.
No, I'm being better about the special editions because I have no room. Like I'm giving books away and people won't even take them. I'm like running giveaways on social media just to get these books out of my house. But no, I've stopped doing that. But that is a toxic trait. I'll see a special edition and I'll buy it. And my other one though is like I will read blurbs too much and like it will stop me from reading something that I maybe should have given a try because if I see something I don't like, I'm like, no. So
This is why she has us, because then I'm like, you got to read this.
you read it anyway. Yeah.
You read it anyway. Um, I will say though, your illustrated covers,
Oh, they're so
they
good.
have faces. So
I know
thank
that's
you.
really important to me.
Thank you. I didn't have to like deduct points for faceless blobs. We got faces.
No, I really like faces on covers, especially illustrated. And I love my designer. She's done all my books. And her name is Bailey. She lives in Paris. And she's been just wonderful. All 6 of my books I did with her.
Well, you can keep her. I approve because they have faces.
Yeah, I like the faces.
You don't understand. We have this whole thing now where we're like, maybe the author didn't have nose money. Maybe they didn't have eyeball money. Like those would have been extra. That's how we're justifying the faceless covers because they had enough money to give them a mouth and
I
some.
don't really get it because sometimes they'll have elaborate backgrounds. I'm like, come on, just give them a little bit of a face. I like faces.
I just want to know how you can wear sunglasses, but you don't have a nose. Like, make it make sense for me.
Mhm.
But I've also seen the ones where it looks like they just took the blur tool and like
Yeah.
wiped the face. And I'm like, oh, that's a choice. But I
Mhm.
love your covers. Your covers are adorable. So let's talk about Emilia because we haven't spent any time on her. She is smart. She
Mhm.
actually feels a little bit like a femme fatale.
She's really smart and driven. And I really, really liked writing about her. She's kind of who I wished I could have been as an archaeologist if I'd stayed with it. Like she fights for herself. She's an archaeobotanist, which is a cool subspecialty of archaeology where you study ancient plant remains. And I sort of made up this backstory, like I don't go into it in the book, but her dad owns like a landscaping service, and so how she would work in like for him in the summers, and she got really into plants that way, and that's kind of guided her being an archaeobotanist.
I
That
didn't
is so
even know that was
interesting.
a sub thing. And then I
Yeah,
did go looking, and that was fascinating.
yeah, it's cool. They just like carbonized seeds and plant remains, and they'll look at stuff from like kitchens and gardens to see like what people ate, and like they'll find stuff like wine sediments and stuff like that.
Well, I ended up down a rabbit hole with, well, you talked about the Tudor kitchen gardens.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, was a whole thing. Like when I
Oh, I
went
bet.
looking,
Yeah.
I fell down a rabbit hole. It
Yeah.
took me a minute to get out. Because that was the start of like the, cross continental moving of herbs and,
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff
so
like
cool.
that. And so it was fascinating. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. But I didn't even know that was a part of archaeology. Like, I had no idea.
Yeah, there's like archaeobotanists, archaeozoologists who do like animal remains, and then like TJ's a lithic specialist, so he studies like bronze and iron and stone tools and things like that. And there's all these different specialties you can choose, or you can just be like an area specialist or whatever. And I was like Mediterranean kind of medieval specialist. That was me. I didn't have like a specific thing like lithics or anything like that though.
Um, so this was book 3 of the series.
Yes.
Are we going to get another book? Like, are we still in archaeology land or are we?
No, I think this is it. I kind of like writing a 3 series because even though it's nice to have a big series, it's easy for people to get into it and finish it and feel completion. And I know a lot of people are completionists. They really like to read an entire series. And I know for me, sometimes I get daunted when I see a book I like and they're like book 7 of 9. I'm like, oh gosh, because I like to read from the beginning. So my other series was also 3 books. So this one's going to be 3, but I'm already sort of brainstorming ideas for my next series because I was going to take a break, but I don't think I'm capable of it.
Are any of us really capable of it? Like taking a break?
Yeah.
I started using an app to track my time for work so that I didn't take on too many projects. And then somebody emailed me today and they're like, hey, would you have space? And I was like, I told Leah earlier today, I was like, I think 5 projects a month, 5 edits a month is my sweet spot. And she's like, oh, that's really great. And I said, I think that'll give me time to work on podcast stuff. And then someone emailed today and they're like, hey, do you have time at the end of this month? My
Yeah.
copy editor fell through. And I'm like, sure, I gotcha.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Because I'm a fool like
Well, I signed up to do an anthology for an event I'm doing, Meet Me in Milwaukee, and it has to involve a lumberjack or a mountain man, and I'm still struggling to figure out what I'm gonna write, because that's like kind of out of my wheelhouse. So that's what I need to work on, because it's due in a month, and I really need to get on that. So that's my next project.
We can help you brainstorm this, like right now. Like, what if a lumberjack found something like a bone in his
That would be true.
in
That
his
would
Or an
yard?
arrowhead or
Arrowhead.
yeah.
something.
That's true, because if you find human remains, you have to stop what you're doing, or if you find, yeah, like cool like artifacts or whatever, that is a good point.
That, or maybe he's like making like wine or something, and you know, digging a cellar that he's going to put his wine vats in, and finds like jug, like a clay jug.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool, actually, because yeah, they'd probably be mad because he'd have to call somebody, and they'd have to stop him from making his wine
Right.
cellar, so there'd be that natural antagonism.
Yeah.
He could be building a log cabin.
Mm-hmm.
It gives him ample opportunity to split wood. I'm just saying.
I
That's
mean,
right, shirtless.
Yep.
and those back muscles, like,
Oh yeah,
And he has to have a beard.
I do
yeah.
like,
Oh, of course, yeah. The beard is just,
I do
of
like a
course.
beard. See, we
Yeah.
can help you with this. Like,
That's good.
we
That's
anybody
good.
else have any ideas for lumberjack,
Yeah,
or what was
lumberjack
it, lumberjack
or mountain man.
or
I
a
mean,
mountain
from
man?
that vibe.
I mean, he could just be grouchy.
Yeah,
Well, I think grouchy goes with the territory, because usually they're not trying to be around a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, they're doing their thing with chopping wood or being up in the mountain and being isolated. You don't want someone annoying coming along.
I do like neighbors in a mountain type situation,
That's fun. Yeah.
like where they're like right next, like there's only two houses on the entire top of this mountain, and they're right next to each other.
Yes. Yeah.
And
You're like, of all the places, like I want to be alone, and you're right next to me.
I just always love it. Like, I always imagine like she picks a flower off of his part of the mountain and he loses his shit, or
And then they could get snowed in at one of their houses. So
Oh,
then you get
bear.
the one bed.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like they need to be held hostage by a bear.
Oh, that would be
Oh,
good.
there you go.
Like, there's a bear outside and they are stuck in the shed together.
Oh, that would be fun. A bear would be good. Good
Right?
thing. My daughter went hiking on the Appalachian Trail last year, and she spent 5 months doing it, and she had to like do all these bear precautions. So she might know more about bears. I could ask her.
There you go.
My husband last year listened to Bill Bryson's book
Oh,
about
yeah,
the Appalachian
Mhm.
Trail, and he was intrigued. He's like, some of it you do not see people for days.
Yeah, and she had to like have this special bear canister for all her food had to fit in it. And then she had to like hang it sometimes from the trees. And there was one night she spent the night in this, like it was like a cage. Some of the shelters are like cages so the bears can't get in. And it was pretty scary.
It's so bonkers to me.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? That does not sound fun.
Well, she's a really passionate hiker, and she loved it. And it was an amazing experience for her. I think for me, I really want to go. I like going to Italy and going to a cafe and drinking coffee and eating,
I really like pastries.
I
Or
mean, I
drinking
love the
wine.
mountains, but I like the cabin in the mountains, the fully decked out cabin in the mountains.
Yeah.
The pastries, the only bear I want to see is like,
Yeah.
the hot
bear
Italian
claw.
hairy guy.
Yeah. Yeah, all my books have a lot of food in them. Like I always
Oh,
put like,
yes.
good food. I love writing about food, so I like to do that.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so I think when you were here at Readathon, did you work in a spice shop?
I still do. I work at a spice store, and I was there today. I sell spices, and so we talk about food a lot. Like at any given time, somebody will be like, just before I left, my boss is like, "Oh, I have this recipe for a pistachio tort, and it has like slivered almonds," and he's talking about it, and we're all like, "Oh, we want to eat this tort." This happens constantly at my job where people talk about food.
I love food. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah,
That sounds amazing.
yeah.
well, and it's so funny because um I am one of those people that plans my trip and then I don't care so much about the hotel or the time, but I will look at the restaurants that are in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
Like when my son was seeing his doctors at the Cleveland Clinic, Little Italy is legit 2 blocks east of the
Nice.
clinic in downtown. And I found this amazing little Italian bakery. Like, sauce is fresh every day. The noodles are homemade. The bread is all
Mm.
fresh. And the case is just lined with all of the different Italian cookies and stuff. And everyone would be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you have to go to the clinic today." And I'm like, "I'm not. I'm getting cannoli this afternoon. It'll be fine."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm always on
I
the
I
hunt.
I love it. I went on to the food tour I took of Rome. We had cannoli, we had like a charcuterie board, we had wine. It was so wonderful to try all these different foods all over Rome.
Yeah.
And I love that. The food tour thing was really, really fun.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. We are so in Southern Ohio in Cincinnati, there's Jungle Gyms. Have you ever heard of Jungle Gyms?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was just in Cincinnati last March. My husband and I were there for spring break, and someone told me about it, and I was blown away by how amazing it is.
It is so amazing. Like, and it is
Yes.
so fun.
Okay, so explain this to me. I don't know about this.
Jungle Gyms, Amanda, to be honest, when we're in Louisville in June, like you and Jeremy, when you leave on Sunday, should go north an hour to Jungle Gyms and then head south. It is a 4-acre international grocery store.
Oh, he would go nuts in there. My
Yeah,
husband is the
it-
chef in
yeah,
our
it's the
family.
biggest international grocery store I've ever seen.
It
Oh, wow.
has, it's 4 acres. Like, the fish are sold live and they're in tanks. So then you pick the one you want. Um, Fresh produce from all over the world. The different aisles are sectioned into countries. And so, like, thousands of pastas, thousands of hot sauce, every Australian or British cookie you could
Yeah.
imagine.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
the Mexican Coca-Cola, like, not just the Coca-Cola, but then they have all the sub flavors too, like the Fanta orange that is the Mexican recipe. The rest, so it's like a little, it's cane. I think they use cane sugar, so it's a little sweeter.
Yeah, it's really sweet.
Yeah, like, it's amazing. If you salsas,
So yeah,
it's
it's
so
so cool.
good.
We lived in India for 5 months back in 2009. And so we went to the India section. We're like, oh, we wrecked some of the cookies, like the really weird, unique stuff that we would
Yeah.
find in the Indian convenience stores were there. And we
Oh,
bought some
wow.
of those cookies. And then we went to the Turkish section because I lived in Turkey. And it was so fun. We just got all kinds of food and snacks and everything.
And cheese, miles of cheese, and, like, I think their liquor store that's their wine and beer is like an acre all on its own. Like, it's just
It's
aisle,
fun.
and
Yeah.
you can do wine tasting while you grocery shop. It's amazing.
Say less, Becky. Say less.
I'm just telling you, like, it's a
Oh,
destination. We'll look at each other and we'll go, I think it's time for a trip to Jungle Gyms. And that is our
Oh,
whole day. We go to the
yeah,
grocery store in Cincinnati.
I was so glad because someone had told me about it and it was raining and we're like, well, let's just try it. And we were like, they give you a whole map, first of all, because it's so big. And it was just a really neat experience. And I was like, yeah, if I go back that way, I'm definitely going there again.
It's so worth it if you ever get the chance. If you're going through Cincinnati,
Yeah.
Jungle Gyms, it is
Yes.
an experience. And spices, like you said,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
and different jerkies and meats, like
Mhm.
ostrich and all sorts of crazy
Big
things.
jams. I love jams. So lots of jams.
Lots of jams. I got this really yummy apricot champagne
Mm.
jam that was a British label. It was so good. I ate it on pizza, flat. I put it on naan bread, globs of
Mm.
it with some brie, and
Nice. Oh,
baked it.
Ooh,
It was so good.
wow.
It's so
Oh my
good.
God.
yummy.
Anyway, just so you know, people make fun of me around here because I have bougie lunch apparently. Anyway, um, so your heroine is Latina,
Mhm.
and you are
Mhm.
Latina, and what? So in writing that, what is important to make sure that you put in there for your heroines?
So I think the thing is about being Latina is I wanted it to be of just a part of who she was, and she has a strong connection to her family, but I didn't want it to be a narrative where it defined her. Like I wanted it just to be able to show you, like, yeah, there's Latina archaeologists. It's like a totally viable thing. It's not like, and it's interesting too because a lot of Latinas are directed towards Mesoamerican archaeology. You're encouraged to study, like, why don't you go to in Mexico? Why aren't you going to like the Yucatan Peninsula? And she does. It does say that she went and did some work there, but she was just passionate about like classical archaeology and ancient Greece and Rome and stuff. So I guess I just wanted to have a very positive representation. She has a very strong connection with her father and her cousins and her family, and that's really important. Um, I wanted it to be a very positive representation of a professional woman.
She has an amazing voice in this book. Like,
Oh,
I
thanks.
really liked her voice. I like her connection to family, but it wasn't her driving force.
No.
Sometimes, we get a heroine that's of Latin cultures and their driving force is, for the family, the betterment of the family. But
Mhm.
her family was building her up, and this was her dreams and
Yeah,
her
yeah.
pushing forward. And I loved that.
Yeah, I didn't want to make it a thing where her dad's like, no, you should be doing something else more practical. I'm like, yeah, he's just really encouraging. And her biggest fear is that he has all these hopes for her and she doesn't want to let him down because he's thinking of her as a professor already and stuff like that. So, yeah, I really liked, I wish I had time to do more with the family, but because it was pretty much in Italy, I didn't really have a chance for that.
Right. Okay, so next is this anthology because you're going to be at Meet Me in Milwaukee this summer. So if
Yes.
anybody is watching and you are headed to Meet Me in Milwaukee, please stop by and say hi to Carla from us. I was actually, okay, so this is terrible. Just the other day, I was saying to my husband, I'm like, how do you feel about a drive to Wisconsin? He's like, no, it's too far. And I was like, dude, I don't think it is. And he's like, no, I think it's too far. So I map quested it, or it's not MapQuest anymore, but I Google mapped it,
Yes.
showing my age by saying I MapQuested it.
Mhm.
Um, it isn't only a 5.5 hour drive for
Yeah, it's
us.
not far. I mean, when we drove to Cincinnati, it wasn't very far.
No.
It's not far at all. I'm actually also going to be at Steamy LitCon this summer too,
Oh,
but
out.
that's further away. That's in Anaheim, so
Yeah, that's in
that's
Los
that's a
Angeles.
flight.
Yeah. So he was like, "So what's in Wisconsin that you want to go to West?" I'm like, all of our travel this summer is all around book events."
That's awesome. I love that. That's
And
great.
he's such a good guy. Like he's like, "Yeah, okay." But Milwaukee, he was kind of like, "I don't know." I was like, we could go. It'd be okay. A long weekend in Milwaukee because you're going to be there. Molly McLean is going to be there. There's some like amazing authors in that
It's
lineup.
going to be fun. Yeah, and you know what? Milwaukee's a neat city too. It's just a really cool city. I think it's underappreciated because we're near Chicago, so Chicago gets all the hype. But I mean, I really love Wisconsin. I've been here for I guess 25 years, and I really, really like it.
Previous to that, were you a California native?
Actually, it's interesting. I was born in Los Angeles, and I moved to Vancouver Island, British Columbia,
Oh,
when I
okay.
was 4. I grew up there, and then I went back to LA when I started grad school at UCLA, and then I stayed in LA. But I had most of my childhood was and my teenage years were in Vancouver Island, in British Columbia,
That's some
That's
very
really cool.
different living.
and it's
Vancouver to Los.
it's it's beautiful there. It is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Vancouver Island is gorgeous. Mountains, forests, oceans, really, really pretty.
Your
I loved it.
lumberjack could live there.
He could, I know, and I was actually thinking about writing a series maybe set on Vancouver Island, so I could go
That
back.
sounds really good.
There you go.
Yeah,
Your lumberjack can live in Vancouver Island, and then
there's
you'd
a
have
lot of forests on the
Yeah.
island. There really is.
and there'd be trees for him to cut down.
Mhm. There's a
And
lot
there
of.
would have been indigenous people there, so he might stumble
You might
upon.
find something.
He
Yeah.
might, yeah, yeah, that's very true because yeah, and it's a big issue because they call it First Nations. First Nations people are, they're wanting to reclaim a lot of stuff that's been put in museums and
Right.
been taken away from them and stuff like that. So that would be kind of interesting.
See, look at us helping you plot.
Yeah, it's great.
We
I'm always
got
up
it
for it.
all.
We're
We
just
are
we're just waiting to read it.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're just going to wait to read it because I really did love Tour Wars. And I do have to go back and I have to read book 1 in the Romancing the Ruins. But I love that series title, Romancing the Ruins, because, I'm obviously a little older and I totally watched Romancing the Stone, and
That's where, yeah, inspired by that.
which,
Yeah.
is to watch it now, it's such a bonkers movie. You're just like,
It's fun though. It's really, really
yeah,
fun.
you're like,
And I like the Indiana Jones movies too. I like the Mummy movies. I like all those movies. And I will say a few people have said, well, I wish your books had more adventures like those, but I just kind of wanted to write more like day-to-day archaeology books and focus on the relationships and stuff like that.
I love The Mummy too.
Me too.
Brandon Fraser was hot in The Mummy.
So hot. Actually, that's where I got the idea for when I watched it. I was like, that's how I got the idea for Troy Story, the characters. I'm like, ooh, what if two people's parents worked on these digs in Egypt and they grew up together because their parents were always in Egypt digging. And that's where I got the idea of their backstory as the kids of two archaeologists.
I do love The Mummy. I think we need a
Yeah.
rewatch of The Mummy.
I know, I kind of want to rewatch that. It's a really good movie.
That's a really great movie.
Yeah.
And it's spicy too.
It is. I mean, yeah, it's good.
Anyway, Amanda's like, what is wrong with you?
No, I love The Mummy. I'm just agreeing, silently agreeing over here.
Okay, so you guys, Tour Wars is available wherever you buy books. It is out there. I grabbed the ebook off Amazon. So it's on my Kindle, but it is such a great book and I highly encourage everybody to check it out. It can be read as a standalone. Make sure you sign up for Carla's newsletter so you know when her next book is coming out. Follow her on all her socials.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say is right now, Field Rules, the first book in the series is on sale. I still think it's still on sale for 99 cents on all platforms. So if you want to start the series inexpensively to see if you'd like it, you can grab it on Amazon or Kobo or whatever, Nook. I think it's still on sale for 99 cents.
Okay, wait, what was book one again?
Field Rules.
Field Rules.
It looks like, here's the cover.
Oh,
I know I shared it. Oh yeah, it's still 99 cents. I'll put a link.
So that's a great entry point. If you, I mean, go ahead. By all means, Tour Wars is awesome. But if you were like, oh, I want to read the first book, this is a good way to get started.
I'm like, my throat here all of a sudden. I will put a link to Tour Wars for 99 cents.
No,
That's
Field Rules.
Or Field
for
Rules. Oh my God. I'm just renaming all your books.
Tour Wars is still full price because it's brand new.
Right. Yeah, but it's only $3.99.
Yeah.
It's not bad. I mean, it's less than a latte, so it's not bad.
Yeah, it's $3.99. It's totally worth it.
Totally worth it.
And I just bought Field Rules. I love that it's in Cyprus.
Yay.
She loves Greece.
Yay.
Yay! Awesome. Carla, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Anytime, we would love to have you back. We're live Sunday night. Our episode theme is nicknames. Amanda is coming with guns a-blazing.
I'm ready to go.
Talking about all the nicknames. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Until next time, everyone. Happy reading.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.